Hello, everyone. Hello, citizens of the world. Thanks for being here. I don't even care if you're not a citizen. I don't get non-citizens, undocumented folks of the world. I don't care if you tunneled to Earth from Proxima Centauri and you didn't have any papers and you showed up and you're being chased and hounded by the goddamn Border Patrol. Still, hello to you. I'm still a fan of yours, non-citizens of the world. Thanks for being here, and let's just you know what? Just this once, I'm going to dive in. Actually, I always dive in. Let's just dive in. So I'm going to get into the epic collapse of FTX, which is a crypto platform that I know everything about and I've known for years. I read about it 2 days ago. But I'm going to get into that. But also, there are new connections coming out between this catastrophic, unprecedented collapse of billions of dollars of crypto being because it was a fraud, the platform was a fraud in many ways, but connections between that, the World Economic Forum, top Joe Biden officials, and Ukraine. And we're going to get into all of that. But as a little beginner here, I wanted to play a montage. This video is incredible. And I don't know if it's possible that the channel that I'm getting it from reposted it, but it is posted by a YouTube channel without many followers called Turncoat Don. But anyway, if they're the first or they're not the first, either way, this video is incredible. But what it does is it parses together the news coverage of the amount of money being sent to Ukraine, right? It's over $100 billion already. It's going to be more than that. The Democrats are talking about sending tens of billions more. So it parses together news stories about that with news stories about fucking homelessness in the United States, struggling people in the United States. And it's just a beautiful montage. So I thought, since we're getting into Ukraine, since we're getting into where the money, the mass amounts of money are flowing and everything, I thought this would be a nice way to dive right in with this montage, which would be hilarious if it weren't reality. Like if this were just a joke, it'd be so amazing. But instead, this is our pathetic ruling elite's reality. All right, I'll stop. I'm doing the thing where I present the video for 45 minutes before I actually play it. It's about 2 minutes long, and I think you're going to enjoy this.
Congress taking quick action, approving a $13 billion deal to help Ukraine.
School districts across our area tell us they're seeing significant increases in children that are homeless.
I'm announcing another $800 million to further augment Ukraine.
A revealing look at homelessness among the middle class.
U.S. have announced new military assistance for Ukraine. They've promised an extra $713 million.
We experienced as a county a 22% increase in homelessness.
The Senate overwhelmingly passing a new $40 billion Ukraine aid bill.
We are learning the homeless problem we are seeing in Knoxville is growing at an alarming rate.
The U.S. is sending an additional $700 million in military aid.
We're in dire straits. We don't know where we're going to go. We have no savings.
The U.S. is sending an additional $1 billion in weapons and aid to Ukraine.
The CEO of the Coalition for the Homeless of Central Florida tells me this is a scary trend.
Pentagon announcing today it's sending a new $450 million military package to Ukraine.
Tonight, we are going in depth on the issue of homelessness, of course, a growing problem here in Colorado.
The U.S. sending an additional $400 million in military aid.
Rising housing costs and inflation are leading to more people living on the street.
The United States is sending another $1 billion in military aid.
69,000. That's how many people are homeless across L.A. County.
A new aid package is going to be announced tomorrow, including an additional $3 billion to train and equip Ukrainian forces.
Sacramento's homeless population had a jump of 67%. The White House now asking Congress for more than $13 billion in additional military aid. More than 2,500 students within the district don't have a place to call home. Yeah, Katie, and that's 1,000 more from last year.
Well, the Biden administration preparing to send another $600 million military package to Ukraine.
There's a stark warning from city officials tonight as they're seeing a record number of families out on the streets.
$275 million to meet Ukraine's critical security and defense needs.
One LA County city is close now to declaring a state of emergency over homelessness.
The White House is also asking for $37.7 billion to fund the war in Ukraine.
Housing prices are up 17% from the previous year, and you can see the fallout of that just right behind me here.
I mean, just amazing. It's amazing when you see it back to back like that. And this also says something about our media, right? This is not just, to me, this doesn't just say, oh my God, the American government is out of their goddamn minds. They're sending hundreds of $billions to Ukraine to fight a proxy war against Russia because we're upset that we no longer have hegemony, that we no longer own the entire fucking world. Oh, we're upset about that. So we're going to send hundreds of $billions. We're going to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian, see how many Ukrainians we can get killed there just so we can, cut off the agreements between Russia and Germany and France, and et cetera. It's not just saying that, which it is saying that. And meanwhile, people are going homeless in America, and all that money could be used for something that's beneficial. Not to mention, I've talked many times about the fact that you could actually house every homeless person and save money. Utah did it, okay? They gave every homeless person, chronically homeless person, they gave them a house or a living space. So it could be a studio apartment, whatever. They gave them a living space. It got rid of almost all homelessness, and then they got rid of the program. And it saved them money because how could giving homeless people an apartment save money? Well, chronically homeless people use resources. They use resources of police. They use resources of emergency rooms that they're often taken to in order to, obviously living on the street is incredibly hard. You end up in the emergency room a lot more. They uses money because of shelters, uses money because of other resources. So it actually saves money to house everyone. But we can't do that because that then reveals how the fuck capitalism works. You need to have the homeless people, as George Carlin said, you need to have the homeless people so that it scares the fuck out of the middle class, so that they are like, I got to keep working my ass off. I got to work 9 to 9 every day so that I don't become like that guy. But if you give that guy an apartment, then people stop doing that. So really, it's to make sure you stay in slave labor. But as I was saying, sorry for the tangent. As I was saying, this also shows something about the media that they can show these two sides of this issue completely separate and never connect them, right? You'll see our mainstream media, all of these different networks you saw here, this last one, CNBC, but it was local networks. It was MSNBC, Fox News, all of them. You can see them talking about another $1 billion going to Ukraine, another $10 billion going to Ukraine, another $50 billion going to Ukraine, billions of dollars going to Ukraine. They can do all of that. And then some of them, maybe not Fox News, also have reports about homelessness and never put any significance in the dichotomy of those two. Never connect those two into something and say, why is it we have A and B? Let's look at these things together as a systems approach. They don't do that, right? Your mainstream media is not in that job. Their job is to say to you, we're sending money to Ukraine and it's a wonderful thing that we're doing that. And then 10 minutes later go, homelessness has increased in your local area and it's really upsetting. And who knows what we could do about this? And they have started sending sandwiches downtown. So there's going to be an increase in minimum sandwich by 10%. I mean, so it says a lot about your mainstream media as well. It's not just about how pathetic and sociopathic, I think you can't really argue against that. Sociopathic our government is. But, and then if you want to I like to talk about the layers of reality. So we have, the layer of reality mainstream media will give you, the layer of reality that I just gave you, which is getting another layer down. Then you get another layer below that, and you get into the fact that we have as much money as we want. The United States can print money. It's largely meaningless. We can print as much as we want, which is how you end up with $1 trillion a year budget for our military industrial complex. $1 trillion a year. When you add in the black budget, sure, they say it's only $800 billion, but you add in the top secret budget, you get to $1 trillion. But that doesn't largely account for the $21 trillion of unaccounted for adjustments, financial adjustments, which was also covered by Forbes, not just me. I'm one of the main people that's covered it, but it was also, there were 2 tiny articles in Forbes about it. $21 trillion of unaccounted for adjustments in the Pentagon. They've been audited 4 times by thousands of auditors, and each time they just come out and go, we failed our audit. But we tried. We just failed. So all this money disappears, because the United States can print as much as we want as long as the petrodollar still exists. So that's why we bend over and let Saudi Arabia do whatever it wants to us, because they're the key. They're the linchpin in us having the unlimited petrodollar. Of course, we also need people to keep using petroleum, gas throughout the world. So we need to keep frying the planet. We need climate change to continue, climate crisis to continue, because we need to keep using fossil fuels. The moment fossil fuels are gone, petrodollar is gone, dollar loses value, America no longer owns the world. That's the overarching crisis that we're seeing right now. I mean, you've got to end up in that crisis at some point, unless you were to end up with a ruling elite of the American system that suddenly decided, you know what, maybe we don't want to fry the world. Maybe we just want to give up our wealth and give up our empire. But they would never do that, right? They'd sooner fry the world. All right, all of this is to lead into another story. Now, you might have heard about the FTX collapse. Let's see. I'll just look up some random article just to show you one of them. Now, I know, I know a fair bit about crypto, but I hadn't followed FTX particularly. I couldn't have told you anything about them a week ago. But they were apparently the 4th largest platform for trading, buying, selling crypto. And in the past week, or a little over a week, something like that, they completely collapsed, and a lot of that money has disappeared. A lot of the money that was on that platform has disappeared. People have lost everything. I read one article about like a guy who he was doing, he was one of these paid coders for gaming, which is a huge industry now. And so he's writing code all day, every day, 9 to 5. That's his job. And he's getting paid in crypto. And they told him to do it through FTX, I think because he was getting paid by another country. And so he had essentially all of his savings in FTX, had not cashed out. And FTX collapses, and he's probably lost it all. And so that's what FTX is. Now, the mainstream media wants to paint all of crypto with this brush and say, crypto's all a fraud, it's all a scam, don't trust anyone. But FTX is not all of crypto. FTX is a platform. And for one thing, other platforms like Coinbase, which I believe is the largest, unless I have that incorrect, it might be second, but I think it's the largest crypto platform. They are located in the United States, which I know the United States is we're our own scam artists, but we actually have more regulation on something like this, believe it or not, than some countries. So FTX was based in Bahamas to get out of regulations. And I think they also had bases in other countries that had like no regulation. And whereas Coinbase or some of these other platforms are based in places where they can't do what FTX did, which was take everyone's money and then act like they have it backed up. Hey, if you want your money, we got it. All you got to do is hit cash out and you'll get all your crypto money. And sure enough, they didn't have it. They fucking don't have it. So they were allowed to, leverage it in a way that is illegal in the United States. Coinbase says it has 1-to-1 It does not have fractional reserve banking, which is a major issue with actual banks, like regular banks, like non-crypto banks. Like we have something called fractional reserve banking in the United States, which means that a bank is only required to have something like 10% of the money that they claim to hold. So you put in $1,000 into that bank, they then use 900 of it to go gamble on the stock market, whatever the fuck they want to do. And then if you come and say, I want my $1,000, well, fine, they'll give you $1,000, but 900 of that's coming from somebody else's money who hasn't cashed out. Well, if you all cash out at the same time, then that bank is fucked. And that's how that system works. So really, FTX, collapsed because of something that would collapse, regular banks. But regular banks in the United States are backed by the U.S. government, so they would jump in and make sure there's not some sort of banking crisis, I guess, if that were to happen. But anyway, all of that's kind of a side note to what we're getting at here in the larger picture and what it has to do with Ukraine, Biden, and the WEF. So let's get into that. Now that you know what FTX is. Collapsed cryptocurrency exchange has ties to Ukrainian government, WEF, and top Biden advisor. FTX made waves with early endorsements by NFL. You might have heard this in the mainstream media. NFL legend Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, his ex-wife, NBA superstar Steph Curry. FTX spent big money on Super Bowl ads with Larry David. In 2021, FTX inked a reported $135 million 19-year deal with the NBA's Miami Heat to rename the American Airlines Arena the FTX Arena. Since I don't follow that many sports, I was unfamiliar with the fact that the Miami Heat play in the FTX Arena. So, Major League Baseball also struck a 5-year deal with FTX to make it the official cryptocurrency exchange. Then FTX collapsed. So FTX co-founder Sam Bankman-Fried, which again, I'm saying we live in a simulation because all these people seem to have names that relate to what they fucking are. Okay, yet another one. Okay, you've got Bush, who was a twat. You've got Obama, who was bombing endlessly. You've got Biden, who we're just Biden time to the end of the empire. You've got Lloyd Blankfein, which is a letter off of Bankfein. You've got Jamie Dimon, head of J.P. Morgan Chase. His last name is fucking Diamond. You got Larry Fink, who runs BlackRock, whose name literally means a detestable person. And now you've got fucking Bankman-Fried, which is exactly what he fucking is. Anyway, we live in a simulation, but the simulation isn't even trying very hard anymore. That's my problem with it. It's like, dude, if you're gonna put us in simulation, at least try harder than that, man. Can you please? So FTX co-founder Sam Bankman-Fried, known in the industry as SBF, lost nearly all of his $16 billion fortune. Who cares about him? But this con game came down to him, though. One of the history's greatest ever destructions of wealth, the Bahamas-based FTX was forced to file for bankruptcy. Reuters reported that between $1 and $2 billion in customer funds vanished from the cryptocurrency exchange. 473 million was stolen by a hack. The outlet also claimed that FTX secretly funneled $10 billion of customer funds into a trading company, Alameda Research. But here's the thing that you're not getting from your mainstream media, which most of this I've said so far, you get from your mainstream media. So I would not be covering it if there wasn't more. Sam Bankman-Fried gives millions to the Democratic Party. He contributed more than $5 million to Joe Biden and groups supporting him during his 2020 presidential campaign. Bankman-Fried gave Democrats nearly $37 million in the 2021 to 2022 election cycle. $37 million. That's insanity. SBF was the second biggest individual donor to Democrats, only surpassed by the $128 million from George Soros. Bankman-Fried said he expected to donate north of $100 million to Democrats in the next election. SBF met with top Biden advisor Steve Ricchetti on April 22nd and May 12th, according to White House visitor logs. So basically what this means is that this guy had donated so much to the Biden and the Democrats that it gave him access. He was able to go and literally meet with in the White House with top advisors to Biden. And let's be honest, what's a top advisor to Biden? A nurse. So he was able to meet with Biden's nurses who tell him what to say and what to write. And that's how this system works. You bribe your way into the White House where you can then influence policy to a great degree. SBF largely funded, and I'm going to get more into this in a moment, but this, of course, is done endlessly by corporations, but the difference is you can't read those names on a visitor log. Like, if you were to read the visitor logs in the White House, it's like, yeah, they probably have someone from Cargill, someone from Bank of America and Citibank, someone from Pfizer, all these people, but they're not like the top people usually, and most of the time, maybe occasionally. And you know, people don't, they go, oh, well, it's a representative of Bank of America. Of course he's meeting in the White House. He's Bank of America is one of the most influential banks in America. So why would he not be meeting with the White House? Whereas we act like it's a bigger deal when it's an individual. This is an individual meeting in the White House. But the truth is that whether it's a member of a corporation like Cargill, the largest one of the largest big ag companies, one of the largest big meat companies, it doesn't matter. That is inverted totalitarianism. It is ruled by the anonymous corporate state. This is a diffuse group of an elite class of sociopaths that do these meetings and make these calls and send these emails and make these phone calls and make these decisions. So we act like it's bigger. Oh, this guy met with, this fraudulent guy met with, but in fact, it's the same. It's all the same corruption and bribery and same pulling of strings and puppeteering. And SBF largely funded the Democratic Protect Our Future PAC that only launched in May 2022. SBF's brother said the PAC was formed to stop the next pandemic. And again, this is all about the Democrats. So this is all about him funding Democrats. However, this is no different with the Republicans. Like this guy or other crypto billionaires easily could be funding Republicans. Many of the corporations, what makes him a little different is he's only funding one side. Whereas most of your big corporations, they will fund both sides. Some a little larger degree and some a little lesser degree, but they will fund both sides so that they own the system no matter what. Bankman-Fried's mother is also a major fundraiser for the Democrats. His mother, Barbara Fried, is a Stanford professor and has written extensively on questions of distributive justice in the areas of tax policy, property theory, and political theory. I love the idea that this is a Stanford professor who has read God knows how many books. And she's a specialist in distributive justice and in property taxes and politics. And she's under the impression that the Democrats are somehow better for you than the Republicans, whereas both are exactly identical when it comes to 90% of the core issues in our country. And she's under the impression that Democrats are going to save you while an equal number of innocent civilians are killed around the world under the Democrats, maybe more. An equal amount of pollution, equal amount of oil, equal amount of destruction of the environment happens under Democrats. Equal amount of wage slavery happens under the Democrats. Equal amount of prison industrial complex happens under the Democrats as the Republicans. So yeah, there are individuals in localities that can be better for you. So that is why I continue to endorse voting, because I think in those local issues you can have an influence. There are 4 states that in voting this past midterm outlawed slavery for the first time. Because, and maybe some of you don't know this, even though I've repeated it many times, when we supposedly made slavery illegal in the United States, we did not make slavery illegal. We made slavery illegal except, big except, for if we arrest you, doesn't need to be for any real reason, but if we arrest you and put you in prison, now slavery is not illegal. You can be a slave in prison. Totally legal to make someone a slave in prison. So 4 states just voted to get rid of that, to close that loophole. So slavery would no longer be allowed in their states. And here we are, 2022. That would be the first time that slavery is not allowed in their states. Anyway, so that my point was there are individuals that can make a difference, but in general, you're talking federal level, Democrats and Republicans are no different. And this woman, despite being a Stanford professor, has not yet figured that out. But whatever. Curiously, the Ukraine. So now let's get into the FTX connection to the Ukrainian government and the WEF. Curiously, the Ukrainian government launched a cryptocurrency donation website in March of this year, backed by FTX. Now, something to remember here is this is the 4th largest crypto platform. FTX was before it collapsed. Why would Ukraine, in their moment of need, decide to work with the 4th largest instead of just having it on the largest platform or the 2nd largest platform? They chose FTX clearly because of its connections to the Democrats. The Democrats, I would assume, which currently run the United States, much of it, the Democrats probably said to them, yeah, set up a crypto donation thing. It'll be easy to get around any shenanigans, financial shenanigans that we got to deal with, and go through FTX, who's our buddy. He's the Democrats' buddy. This is from CoinDesk. Aid for Ukraine is the name of it, which has the backing of the crypto exchange FTX, staking platform Everstake, and Ukraine's Kuna exchange, will route donated crypto to the National Bank of Ukraine. Everstake's head of growth, Vlad Lakuta, told CoinDesk. Ukraine's crypto-savvy Minister of Digital Transformation is also involved. An Everstake press release stated, Aid for Ukraine is cooperating with the cryptocurrency exchange FTX, which converts crypto funds received into fiat and sends the donations to the National Bank of Ukraine. And if any of you need this reiterated, the war in Ukraine is a proxy war. That has been also stated by none other than former director of the CIA, Leon Panetta, has said that this is a proxy war, whether we call it that or not. And by we, he meant the U.S. ruling class, which he is a part of. And by proxy war, it means the U.S. is fighting Russia. We are funding and arming the Ukrainians to fight Russia. So really, Russia and the United States are fighting in Ukraine, killing as many Ukrainians as necessary. And a peace deal, I covered it in my new show, Most Censored News, which if you want to check out, it's at youtube.com/behindtheheadlines. I hope you'll subscribe there. But I covered how there was actually a peace deal ready to go in April. And the UK, Boris Johnson, via the US, was the puppeteer, sent Boris Johnson to Ukraine to tell Zelensky not to sign that peace deal. And that if he did sign that peace deal, that the US and other Western allies would no longer back Ukraine. So basically, Ukraine would be fucked if all of their backers, all of their so-called allies disappeared. And they knew that. So Zelensky, who, he seems like a pretty awful person. I mean, he has Nazi guards, but he was going to sign a peace deal, and then he backed out of it because of Boris Johnson, who also admitted that was the conversation he had to Macron. But anyway, Moving on. Last little bit here. The World Economic Forum, the WEF, lists FTX as a partner and provided a link to the exchange's website. The original version of their website that had that link has been removed, but you can see it in the archived version. I love how FTX collapses due to utter fraud, utter fucking just scam artistry. And WEF is like, let's just remove that from the website because we'll pretend like we didn't have anything to do with that. But in a larger sense, and this is the part of it that I don't think you'll get from that many other even independent media, even live streams and things like that. I don't think you'd get this aspect of it, that yes, this is fraud. This is fraud connected to the Democratic Party, Ukraine, WEF. This is a massive scam, massive bribery. But this is also how our system works. This is nothing new. This is nothing shocking in that way. The only difference between FTX owning our politicians, donating billions to, well, donating millions, but being a billionaire, donating millions to these candidates, etc. The only difference is that this guy's exchange collapsed because he was playing fast and loose with the rules and not having the money on hand to cover if people were to make a run on it. And but other than that, there's no difference between FTX owning the Miami Heat stadium and owning your politicians and being linked with the Ukrainian government and the WEF. There's no fucking difference between that and Citibank, right? Citibank has stadiums. Citibank owns all your politicians. WikiLeaks revealed emails between the Democrats showing that Obama's entire cabinet, not entire, but something like 80% of it, was picked by Citibank. Citibank, literally, like the heads of Citibank literally emailed Obama and said, here's who the cabinet members will be that we view as acceptable. And 80% of them became his cabinet. So there's no difference except that this guy's shit collapsed. And by the way, if there was a run on all these other things, if everybody tried to sell their Google stock instantaneously, it would collapse as well. If everybody tried to cash out of any of these things, it would all collapse. Like this is all a Ponzi scheme. It's just FTX was a little looser on the way they played the Ponzi game. But anyway, a lot of this is what you won't get from your mainstream media. And your mainstream media, obviously, the so-called liberal mainstream media, MSNBC, CNN, PBS, all those, you're not going to hear that top Biden officials were meeting with this guy. You're probably not going to hear that he was the top Democratic donor outside of George Soros. You probably are going to get that from Fox News. Like they'll tell you that part. But what Fox News won't tell you is the second part, that these two parties they agree on 90% of the structural issues of the country, and they are all funded by scam artists and billionaires and sociopaths. So this is the system. Welcome to the system. Ta-da! And let the show continue. All right, let's get on to the next story. Now, this may seem like a small issue, but I'm going to show you why this is a big issue, why this is not a small issue. So, a lab-grown meat startup has gotten the FDA's stamp of approval, and it's the first time that a lab-grown meat startup has achieved the FDA approval. Cultivated meat, and by the way, when you hear the term, it's kind of a euphemism. Yeah, I get it. Probably, yeah, it's basically a euphemism. It's basically made to sound that make it sound nicer. But the reason it's called cultivated is because it's grown in a culture, right? Like a petri dish. So like a culture in a petri dish, it is cultivated. So they call it cultivated meat rather than lab grown because people don't like the term lab grown. But anyway, cultivated meat has been greenlit in the United States for the first time. The decision by the FDA means that a company called Upside Foods will soon be able to sell chicken made from real animal cells grown in bioreactors instead of requiring the slaughter of live animals. Now, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself here, but there's a lot of things to be said about this. For one thing, when people hear the term lab-grown meat, they immediately go, "Oh, gross! Gross! It's lab-grown, disgusting." And yet, it's like they somehow get past the fact that most of their hamburgers, like at McDonald's and shit, are just like fucking cow anus. Like, it's just eyeballs and anus and snouts. It is the most rancid shit. Like, and yet you say lab grown, which has never been an anus, which has never been an eyeball, and all these fucking awful, disgusting garbage. You say lab grown and people go, "Oh, disgusting." And it's like, dude, the amount of propaganda and social engineering. And it, by the way, it took me a while to realize this as well. I had the same reaction that many of you have. You hear the term lab grown and you go, "Oh, repulsive." I had that same reaction until I actually thought about it like a rational adult. And it's like, compared to, I mean, we sit there and eat fucking rip meat off of like tendons and you see like veins, all this disgusting shit. And then we go lab grown. We're sitting there, dude. They found out there was an investigation that found out that a percentage. There's arguments over how much. Maybe it was 10%. Maybe it was, some people say as high as 30. But a percentage of calamari, fried calamari sold at restaurants, is actually pig anus, because taste testers can't tell the difference once it's fried. You know, it's been bleached, it's been fried, that's it. And so maybe it's not, you know, some people say it could be as high as 30%, but let's say it's the lower number. Let's say 10%. 10% of the time you get fried calamari at a restaurant, you're eating pig anus. And by the way, this may have stopped as well. It was these reports were 10 years ago or something. So I don't know whether this continues. But, oh, and by the way, they've also done studies that like 50% of the fish you're given at restaurants, you're told it's one kind of fish. It's actually not. It's actually a different kind of fish. But anyway, that's a side note. But so 10% of the time you're eating pig anus instead of fried calamari. No one really cares. I mean, yeah, you tell them that and they go, ew. But no, it's not. It's not like restaurants were set on fire. Life moves on. Nobody really cares that much. But you say the term lab-grown meat and everyone goes, "Oh, God." And it's like the amount of social engineering, the amount of propaganda and bullshit we had to grow up with to think that something that was never part of a living animal is worse, is grosser than fucking hacking that living animal to death, slicing its throat, cutting it up, cutting out, if you're lucky, cutting out the fucking tendons and veins and shit so that you don't have to look at that too much. You don't have to be chewing on too much cartilage. Like, the idea that this is somehow grosser is just amazing to me. It's amazing. It's just a tremendous amount of social engineering. So that's one reason that I want to say this is different than people act like. But beyond that, and of course, this isn't in the article. This won't be in any of the news that you hear about this. I'm sure there's an article about this FDA approval somewhere in the New York Times this week or last week. Maybe on a page B12. But what they won't say and what they cannot say, because Big Ag owns our media, our politicians, all of it. And you won't hear it from really most live streamers, most independent-minded outlets. You won't hear it. They don't care. Or it's something. I don't know what it is, but they're not going to talk about it either. But here's what you won't hear. Meat in general, and I'm not saying one person having having a fucking roast beef sandwich is the problem, but meat writ large, the meat industry, 22% owned by Cargill in America, is one of the largest, if not the largest, environmentally destructive industries in the world. The amount of fresh water used is unbelievable, way beyond showering and all this shit. When they tell you, oh, don't take a shower take a shower every other day, it'll save water. One burger is 2 months of showering. So shut the fuck up about showering. So fresh water, the amount of pollution, they think that they believe the red tide, or not believe, they know the red tide, which killed all the fish, made the beaches in Florida, what was it, a year ago or 2 years ago, just covered in dead fish. They reeked. You couldn't go in the water. This is Florida. This is beautiful Florida, right? Couldn't go in the water because it's just diseased and awful and dead, and all of that is caused by agricultural runoff that is caused mainly by the meat industry. There's cities in North Carolina which is the biggest pork producing state. There's cities in North Carolina where, because they have pig shit lagoons, I'm not kidding, that's what they are. Yeah, they have some other term for them, euphemism, but pig shit lagoons. Pigs create an immense amount of shit and whatever else, vomit, piss, urine, all that. Immense amounts, more than they could ever deal with, because they have millions. There's 1 billion pigs in America that are being slaughtered so that we can eat bacon on our fucking wrapped around our hot dogs and bacon in our candy bars and all this shit. But 1 billion pigs. What do they do with all that feces and urine and just shit? What do you do with it all, right? You can't just put it in an envelope and send it to people. You can't hide it in your basement, right? That's going to fill up pretty quick. We can put it in Lisa's bathroom, right? She has 2 bathrooms. Maybe she just use one. We'll put it in the bathtub or the other one. That's going to fill up pretty quick. What do you do with it? Well, they put it in these massive pig shit lagoons, like lakes of shit and urine that reek and are awful. And of course, they're completely dead. There's nothing, fucking, and if a bird accidentally, you got that one bird in the V, you got that one guy at the end who's a fucking idiot. And they're like, oh, fucking Carl. And Carl's back there like, hey guys, that lake looks nice. And they're like, dude, Carl, do not go. And he goes and he lands in the lake and he fucking dies in seconds. But anyway, but here's the thing. Here's the problem. Not only do the pig shit lagoons flood because we're in a climate crisis, so places that don't normally flood. And then guess what? What happens to pig shit lagoon? It enters the flood water. And so then you have pig shit lagoon through the town. But besides that, what do you do when all the pig shit lagoons fill up? Because that happens too. So next step, they started taking the pig shit lagoons and firing them into the air, aerosolizing them, taking massive lagoons of nothing but shit and urine. By the way, pig shit lagoon, also Mitch McConnell's nickname in high school. Taking the pig shit lagoons and just hosing it into the air so that it would waft away. Well, where does that go? Do you think it stays in the air? Do you think it goes up into the upper atmosphere and then lands in Guam or fucking Pakistan? No. Maybe some of it does, but most of it stays in the air for a bit and then trickles down in a way that you can't really see it too much. But you smell it. And these towns, some of these towns in North Carolina, reek of shit because the town is being laminated in shit. Laminate, just covering like invisible film of shit on your families, on your houses, everywhere. And they were going to ban this practice in North Carolina. But here's the problem. Big Ag owns your lawmakers. It owns your lawmakers in North Carolina, owns your lawmakers in most other states, all other states. So the Big Ag funded politicians went running to the State House and forced through a bill to protect the practice of spraying pig shit on their own constituents, on their own voters. And just to add one more insult to injury, and I don't know if this is true today, but it was true then. It was true then being, this is probably 4 years ago. One of the largest, what's it called? Smithfield, is it? Anyway, one of the largest pork producers has been bought by a conglomerate of companies or whatever, which is a Chinese conglomerate. So China technically owns the company that owns the pigs that spray pig shit on you in North Carolina. And I'm sure this practice goes on in other states as well, but the reports I was reading were about North Carolina. So if you think that we're winning this new Cold War against China, which, by the way, we shouldn't have a Cold War. We shouldn't have nations, really. We should all get along and just be peaceful and create a sustainable environment. So there's that. But if you think, but to live inside the culturally acceptable Overton window for a second, if you think we're winning this new Cold War against China, they're spraying their pig shit on us. Okay? So I think, honestly, anytime I've ever seen an argument, whoever's hosing the other one down in literal feces, that person's winning. Like, if you're spraying the other guy in literal feces, you're winning the argument every time. Every time. So to get back to lab-grown meat and why lab-grown meat is preferable to having billions of animals that are slaughtered. And I haven't even gotten it. You'll notice this whole thing, talking so far, I haven't mentioned the treatment of the animals, how horrific it is. I've only talked about us, how much it sucks for us. I haven't even gotten in to what it's like to be one of these pigs in this miserable situation. So, and the reason I do that is because that's an easier argument to win for against those of you who eat meat. And I don't deny the fact I grew up on meat. I ate it until I was 25 or something. And so I'm 20, I'd say 27% chicken McNugget right now, still to this day. So the reason I discuss it that way is because I feel like you go to someone and you just go, hey, the animals are being horribly treated. And most people go, that sucks. Yeah, don't treat them that way. And then they walk away and they go and they eat their meat sandwich. People don't care how the animals are treated for the most part. But you say, hey, you're being hosed down in pig shit and it's destroying, not only that, but it's destroying your environment, it's destroying your water, it's destroying your air, it's destroying your fields, it's destroying your forests, and you will have no future for your children. And then they start to come around. They go, oh, I kind of like to have a future for my children because I actually have kids and it'd be cool if they had like a future, like a place that they could live on the planet. All right, so to go back to this article for a second. Cultivated meat has been greenlit by the FDA. Different startups are focusing on a range of cultivated meats, including beef, chicken, salmon, and tuna. This announcement applies only to Upside Foods and its cultured chicken, although it's likely that other declarations will follow soon. We would want to bring this to people through chefs in the initial stage, says the head of Upside Foods. And the reason they want to do that is twofold. It's a marketing trick, which, if it works, all right, fine. But to make people think this is an elite thing. Oh, you can't get it anywhere. This cultivated meat, you can only get it from these really great chefs. And the really great chefs also make it taste really good. So that is how they do it initially. But furthermore, lab-grown meat, as I'll say in a minute, is not easy to create. So there's not like tons of it. You can't have just like every grocery store filled with lab-grown meat at this stage. In December 2020, Singaporean regulators gave the green light to cultivated chicken from a San Francisco-based startup, Eat Just. The chicken nuggets were sold at a members-only restaurant and later made available for delivery. Cultivated meat is different from plant-based meats because it contains real animal cells, but animals aren't killed to create it, and is theoretically indistinguishable from real meat itself. So if you were to eat these things, you would not, if they gave you one from a dead animal and one from cultivated meat, you wouldn't go, it's not like tofu or something where you go, okay, I see it's not awful, but it's not meat. And it wouldn't be like that. It would be, you literally couldn't tell the difference. Small samples from cell lines can be transferred to bioreactors, usually large steel tanks where the cells are fed growth media containing nutrients that the cells need to divide. Once the cells have grown and differentiated into correct kind of tissue, they can be harvested and used in cultivated meat products. And just keep in mind, through none of that process is any of it sentient. There's no living thing in there going, oh, I hate being a lab-grown meat. This sucks. But as comparison to the way most people eat meat now, which is an actual living, thinking thing that prefers to not be tortured through its whole life. My bigger thing, just to talk about the animal treatment for 1 minute, and this is not where I spend most of my time, but my bigger thing is not the death of the animal, because once we're dead, we're dead. Once I'm dead, if you want to do whatever with my body, if you want to, shoot it into outer space as Hunter S. Thompson had with his body, then fine. Do whatever you got to do. I'm dead. I can't care at that point. But it's not the death thing that bothers me. It's the torture for their entire life that bothers me more about the treatment of these animals. Many of them literally go their entire lives never walking in an open field for a second. Like in a cage, many of the cages are so small they can't turn around. The animal can't turn around their entire lives, can't turn around. But even if it's big enough to turn around, many of these animals will never ever experience walking in a field for a second their whole lives. So anyway, to go off on the treatment of these animals for a second. Growing cells in this way is extremely expensive, though. Startups keep the exact cost of growing these cells tightly under wraps. And this is where you get into something that, again, your mainstream media would never mention. Even articles about this lab-grown meat won't mention. There can be no discussion about what I'm about to tell you. So to continue the quote from the article, some projections for future facilities suggest that even large facilities will produce meat at a cost of $17 per pound, which would be way higher prices than your regular hamburger meat or pork or whatever, or chicken. But here's the thing that none of these articles can tell you, none of them can mention, is regular meat, whatever, farm-raised meat, and again, torture meat, it's heavily subsidized. Heavily subsidized. The fact that a McDonald's burger is $1 or $2, studies have been done, and this is 10 years ago, so this number is probably way higher now. Studies have been done showing a McDonald's hamburger, if it was not subsidized, would cost $200. Our government steps in and covers a large percentage of the raising of the cows, of the raising of the food that's fed to the cows, all the corn and wheat and everything, covers a lot of the water and everything that has to go to the cows, but also covers the externalities of the destruction of the planet, the destruction of the environment in various ways. Our government's covering all of that. So all of that's subsidized, outsourced to the people. You deal with it. A hamburger should cost $200. So when you have an article like this say, oh, well, lab-grown meat sounds wonderful, would help save the planet. Well, they don't even say that, but I'm telling you that. But sounds wonderful, sounds great, would be nice, but too expensive. Not if it were subsidized like we subsidized the actual animal meat that we eat right now. So it's bullshit. It's bullshit to say this will cost $17 a pound while regular hamburger costs $1 a pound or whatever the fuck. It's bullshit. But they can't tell you it's bullshit because that would undermine capitalism. That would undermine profit over all else. And that would undermine Big Ag, which owns these outlets, owns your media, owns your politicians. All right, folks, I'm going to complete this live stream at rumble.com/Lee Camp. I actually give you a little extra there on all the other platforms. But the rest of this, and I have more stories coming up, including roads that will charge your car already being instituted. Like the road will charge your car as you drive. Anyway, I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, so I got more for you. So join me, rumble.com/Lee Camp, completely free to go over there. And that's where the rest of this live stream will be. If you are watching there, then you have nothing to worry about. This will continue as is. But in all the platforms, either way, will you join leecamp.net? Please go join over there. It's free to join. If you don't want all the content, you get most of it, but you don't get all of it. But I hope you will join at least the minimum level, which is $1.25 a week.